Hey everybody, welcome to the show. We're live, and I'm here with a whole bunch of my Patreon patrons. But before we get into our usual monthly session of jaw-jacking and interrupting each other and whatnot, Lauren, you had something you wanted to share right at the beginning, so let's go for it.
What I'd like to share, there's a sort of something of a backstory behind this, but I don't want to, just go crazy with the conversation here. What I mostly want to share is this. This is a book which was recently published by a friend of mine by the name of Terence Meaden. He is an Oxford professor of, I believe, astronomy, and I think he's got at least one other doctorate. And he published this thing called Q. Q stands for quotes.
Okay.
And
cool.
I should mention he was a member of Atheist Nexus before Atheist Nexus went belly up, and he is also a member of Atheist Universe, which is where I currently hang out now. And these are a collection of quotes regarding atheism. And the reason why I was so stoked when I first took a look at this is something I'm going to share with you right now. Just a moment. This is literally from I believe it's the second page of the preface, and it says as follows: in contrast to the bold assertions of religious faith, science is without dogma. It is forever open to inquiry, experimentation, and verification, forever willing to be revised if fresh evidence calls for it. There are no fables, no legends, no irrationalities, no spirits. Using the facts of science and well-supported logical hypotheses, scientists uncover practical, credible explanations for the physical laws from which they can predict still more. Unlike theists, readily satisfied by the blindness of faith, science shuns illusory fantasies. As Lauren Miller wrote, we live now in an age of science, methodology, and logic, where rational thought is slowly but surely displacing superstition as the primary means of evaluating our reality, how it behaves, and what we can do with it. The brand of crossing your fingers, which Pascal's wager represents, has no place and is unsupportable by any form of rational analysis. 14 November 2009, Atheist Nexus. Yeah, he cited me.
Awesome. I was thinking that's where you were building to. So
not only that.
That's cool.
God. Apparently, this whole time I thought my microphone was muted, and I've been clicking away because I've been playing Tetris while listening to him. I'm sorry for my obnoxious...
Good backdrop.
Go ahead, Lauren.
He not only that, he cites me a total of 10 times by name and twice, for whatever reason, by my initials. And
that's
I mean,
awesome.
Here's the thing. I mean, at the risk of showing off my age, I'm 70 years old. And one of the things that's sort of been cropping up in my thoughts lately is, when I vanish off of this planet, am I going to be remembered? That is a little bit less of a question now.
That is so cool.
Yeah. I was floored. There's one other quote that I would like to share, if I might. Just a second here. I've got to pull it like a dope. I dropped out of it, and there we go. Let's see if we can. Come on, I know it's here.
To answer Matthew's question, Lauren was quoting from a book called Q, which stands for quotes. Unfortunately, not that Q,
not the other Q,
or the other Q that we
Thank
like
goodness.
in Star Trek.
That's true. Yeah.
I mean, chaotic evil or chaotic neutral, and it's just still, it's just so long as we don't have to deal with the aftermath that Q does, and if or they're not directly interfering with us, and it's totally cool.
Well, I mean, this thing, for whatever reason, this thing doesn't want to search. So I'll see if I can scare it up in another venue, if you'll give me just a second.
Of course.
But I happen to think this is a pretty good quote.
You know what, though, Lauren? I just want to say this is really cool, though, that you're now in a book, let alone this many times in the same book, because it effectively means you're immortal. There's going to be some part of you that has been recorded for the collective of human history.
Yeah, and I will be the first to admit, I mean, it's there whether I like it or not. But okay, here we go. This is one of the other quotes that's in there that I wrote. God, it's easily 10, 11 years ago, but I think it's pretty good. Something which does not exist cannot help us, but chronic dependence on something which fails to exist does active harm to all of us.
It's a good quote.
Yeah, thank you.
Solid.
That's a good quote. So, that's some solid atheism, buddy.
Well, I mean, that to me, that's the point.
Yeah.
And
that you should, I agree that certainly we shouldn't be, treating religious belief as equivalent to, things like science and medicine and, things that actually have a chance to have an effect on, the material world.
I do not suggest that, when the science evolves and more is found out, that somebody like a Dr. Fauci is not flip-flopping. He is.
Yes. We just know more now. It's different.
That's the thing, though. So many people don't grasp that concept. They think, well, wait, one day we thought gravity worked like this. Now we say it works like this. Make up your mind. And they think that means science doesn't work.
And I have the perfect example for that. The whole issue of Newtonian physics, Newtonian kinematic physics versus, general and special relativity. You can't explain the orbit of Mercury using Newtonian physics. You can with Einsteinian physics. It's a superset. It's a superset of the original. Newtonian physics works great as long as you're not operating within an appreciable degree of the speed of light, or you're operating within, within range of a serious gravity well.
Because I thought that
gravity impacts time.
Mercury's so close that it can't. Because I thought that Newtonian physics was capable of handling objects at a planetary scale, but it doesn't work at a quantum scale.
But it's the
other way too.
It's the precession of Mercury.
Far out.
Mercury.
We rarely ever throw out theories that have worked for hundreds of years, but what we do find are the limits of that theory. So, like you were just saying, it doesn't work at the quantum scale at the low end. But we're also finding out it doesn't work at the macro scale, like at a sun size scale either. So we know within these bounds, Newtonian physics works great. There's a little bit of error. There's always a little bit of error when we have a mathematical model trying to show us what is really happening. But as science improves, we find out the limits of that, and they keep getting closer for that older theory, and we have new ones to take the rest of that space. But we rarely ever throw out a theory. It's just, it seems like we're changing things because, we're talking about this subject where we used to put Newtonian, but now we slid Newtonian over here. So now this is under relativity instead. And, when, we figure out quantum loop gravity or some of these other things, it's going to be like, we're going to change those limits again at some point. So it's just a matter of, what is it going to look like when our new limits show up, when new things are discovered about the universe around us?
We're talking about the evolution of science, I just find it, what was sticking in my head was from my physics classes in high school, the gravitational constant. And I was like, so that was for planetary bodies. Sorry, geek.
Geek, you were going to say something.
As I just to add to the comment of yes, science changes and involves this, because I love this quote, because when I'm presented with new information, I change my opinion. Sir, what do you do with new information?
Exactly.
This is the thing, though, is that for some people, it's scary to not know as much today as you could tomorrow. They want to know everything at the start. They want a simple explanation for everything right now.
Yeah. Feynman had a great quote on that. I'd have to dig it up, but he had a terrific quote on that. I wish I knew what it was, but the whole point being scientific knowledge is without exception provisional. I mean, certainly there are certain things that aren't likely to change anytime soon, but I mean, that's what we call a theory, because the concept of a theory means that something can be added to it as we discover something new. And I think that's fantastic. It's exciting. It's actually exciting to me that we can say, okay, well, wait a minute, what about this phenomenon over here that we haven't quite, is that how that works? That's the whole idea of discovery.
And Eureka!
It's also one of those.
Exactly.
It's also one of those things that it helps if you get into the habit of treating science the way and using science the way it's designed to be used. It also encourages you to sort of transfer those traits to the rest of your life too. And being open to changing your mind is a good thing. You know, whether you're talking about like accepting new scientific evidence or any other facet of your life, and being open to changing your mind, being open to growing and to evolving as an individual is a good thing. So if you can learn to accept that, you know, I thought that if you're a scientist and you have a pet theory that you've been working on your whole life, and then it turns out some new evidence comes up that proves you wrong or proves that you had a particular point wrong or takes things further than you had taken them in a way that you didn't anticipate or whatever, and you have to adjust your thinking and change your mind, and you're humble enough to be able to do that. Which not every scientist has always been, but nevertheless, if you're doing, that's why I say if you use science the way it's designed to be used, and you're able to see past your own biases and your own prejudices and et cetera, that trains you to do that in other parts of your life as well. And that is without exception a good thing.
Yeah. Steve, here's another quote that I like a lot. You can say what you want about the guy, but here it is. The one experience I hope every student has at some point in their lives is to have some belief you profoundly, deeply hold prove to be wrong, because that is the most eye-opening experience you can have. And as a scientist, to me, is the most exciting experience I can ever have. And that's Lawrence Krauss.
Yeah.
I just realized that Steve and I are basically mirrored.
The way you sit down.
I just wish that one of his experiences that were is women are actually people.
Yeah, Krauss has some growth to do in many areas.
I'll stipulate that Krauss has a problem, but the blunt end of the stick is his statement there is still on point.
Oh, sure. Geek, you had something else.
Well, it's up to your point of like you have to like know your biases and understand those sort of things. Because like months ago on Social Justice Alchemy, which there's a new one later on today. I don't know what the hell we're going to be talking about though. John Brockman shared a study about that proves that like autistic people are more moral than like allistic people. And the thing is, like we kind of pointed out, it's just like I had to ask, was there any autistic people that were actually a part of the study and performing this sort of thing? And John Barr was like, you had to ask that because they kind of like asserted that like if you were unobserved, that you would do the immoral thing, and that is normal. Autistic person that's more rich in their morality, they will do the moral thing even when unobserved, as where like people watching the social pressures, that sort of thing. And also there was whole problems in the scientific study of the framing of like morality with autistic people versus allistic people. So again, this is why we have to say nothing about us without us, which the letters of that like a phrase forms sodium ooh.
Wow.
Good to know. Actually, I wanted to tie this in a little bit. If this is a little bit of a stretch, but I think I can make it. Before we went on the air, we were talking a little bit because Lauren, you were talking about how like Isaac Asimov had been a speaker during like a college lecture, and also Rod Serling, and you reminded me of. There are a couple of videos that are, I know they were included as special features on Twilight Zone DVDs, and I think they're available on YouTube as well, of Rod Serling like meeting with students and giving like a little bit of a writing class. And one of the things that always impressed me about those was how mercilessly critical he was of his own writing. To the point where he would talk about things that he wrote, like episodes of the Twilight Zone that he wrote that today are widely considered classics. And he talked about them like they were garbage. Like, I mean, one of my favorite episodes of the Twilight Zone is called Walking Distance. About a guy, like a guy who's actually, and now he's said to be a couple years younger than I am now. I'm 41. He's supposedly 38, I think, in the episode. But his car breaks down within, a few miles of the town where he grew up. So he walks to town to, sort of kill time while he's waiting for his car to get fixed. And as he walks to his old town, unbeknownst to him at first, he also walks back in time. So when he arrives at his hometown, it's actually the year when he was like 10 years old or something. And he has this, experience of going back to his childhood as an adult and seeing his parents again and seeing himself as a child. And it's, to me, it's a great episode. And to a lot of people, it's one of the high points of the series. And Rod Serling, you can tell in this talk he's giving with these students, is just not happy with it at all. And this was, I guess, in the late 60s, because Serling died in the 70s. So this was not, it was a few years after the episode had aired, but not, he's not like looking back from that far, but still he has some distance between it. And he's just like, it's a good concept, but I just wish it could have been better written. And it's like, it's one of your best episodes, dude. And he's just, and all he sees are the flaws. All he sees are what he would do differently.
Well, hindsight is always 20/20 too. So
yeah.
I mean,
the difference between Rod Serling and let's just say another science fiction producer, he didn't have the funds or the wherewithal to go back and keep tinkering with the product.
Yeah. Yeah, Steve.
Also, it's such a
who could you be talking about
that you legitimately could do like so many different takes on it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But I think that's a mark of maturity and of being open to seeing and accepting your own flaws, or even
he was willing to wallow in his own misery so he could appreciate the art.
Yeah, well, and not being willing to search out your own flaws and your own shortcomings, and hopefully not in a way that's too neurotic, because you can take that too far really easily. But being willing to look back at your own work and say, and because when you're the creator of something, you have a unique perspective, and you can go back, and everybody else might look at it and say, oh, that was genius. And all you see are the things that now, looking back, that you would do differently if you wrote it now. And I think it's a good lesson especially for young writers or young artists of any medium, to get used to that.
Steve?
Look, I can't look at anything older than like 2 years of mine, any comics, any art, any writing. I can't look back and not go, oh, this is ass. Yeah,
I think that I have that experience with my writing as well. Like I think if you care at all about your work and you're at least somewhat, I mean, you're never truly objective, but if you can at least lean in the direction of objectivity a little bit, I think, I mean, that happens to me too, where I'll look back at something that at the time when I wrote it, I was just, oh, this is great. And now I read it and I'm like, holy shit, this is bad. And it's the same. It's nothing has changed about the work. I'm what's different,
It's funny. It goes beyond just a, for an artist, because I'm not a creative person by nature at all. And my work is, pretty strictly like office business type work.
Right.
And, and I have this career, but I look back at what I've written in the past, either be it a white paper or a memo or anything else, or a report or something. I even look at that from 5 years ago.
Yeah.
As somebody who's 20 years into my career, so you wouldn't think 15 years in, would be that different from 20 years in. But I'm like, oh my God, I didn't know how to communicate anything.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I see stuff I've written 2 months ago and be like, did I actually write this? Isn't this someone else?
There's some artists that would be like, don't remember drawing whole like strips of like a manga that they did. But that's because they're also like working 12-hour days and like put out a manga too. So there's that aspect to it.
Lauren, jump in.
Yeah. Did you see, I presume as you and maybe some of the rest of you have seen the interview that back in the mid to late 1950s that was done with Rod Serling by a very young Mike Wallace?
I have seen that. Yeah.
I thought it was brilliant. And the impression I get from Serling, first of all, of course, is again that sense that he is determined to deliver quality. And the second thing is, even with his successes, he's hungry. He is very damned hungry. And that's, again, what's driving the quality issue. That's what's driving everything. And as it comes to the whole issue of looking back on something, I mean, I've written some blogs, you know, for Atheist Nexus and some other things here and there, and some of the comments I've given you on your YouTube videos.
Sure.
And I look back and said, God damn, did I write that? I thought, you know, I wonder sometimes when I'm in the moment and writing that, you know, I astonish myself that, did I actually write that? Well, you know, because, you know, it's exactly the opposite sometimes, that I think, damn, that's pretty good.
Oh, hell yeah. Absolutely. That's a good feeling to have too. I mean,
oh yeah,
you know, and I think it's about finding the balance, because
yeah.
I don't think you can, I mean, you do need to be confident in any kind of, whether it's a performance art or writing, or, I mean, really in anything, not like CMX said, it doesn't even have to be a creative pursuit. Like if you're doing something that requires you to have and exhibit a certain amount of skill, you need to be confident in yourself and confident in your ability to do it. And there, you need to have the capacity to say, you know, I can do this, and this will be better because I did it.
Yeah.
Rather than somebody else.
There's a concept I remember learning about. I forgot whether I heard this when I was in school or after, that in the development of anything, there's a time when you say you have to, quote, kill the engineer. You know, because the engineer, well, tweak this and tweak that, and is that just right the way it should be, and blah, blah, blah. You know, and I got to believe it's the same way with writing. At some point, you got to kill the writer and say, let it go, make it happen, get the reaction. And learn from it, maybe.
Absolutely. There is a point, at least for me, and I've known from talking with other people and hearing other creative people describe their own process. This isn't unique to me at all. I mean, there does come a certain point where it feels like the project itself kind of takes over. And like you, and it's not so much, it's not, and you know, no kind of, you know, supernatural thing or whatever, but it's almost like, you know where it's going. Like you get to a point, you write so much, you get so much of it done, and you just know where it's going. And then the work becomes getting it there. You no longer have to, you know, lay down the track. You know what I mean? Like the track has been laid, and now all you need to do is get it to the destination. And there is a lot of, and once you get to that point, a lot of it is just staying out of your own way and trusting yourself and going, nope, don't try to keep adding stuff. Don't make this more complicated than it needs to be, you know, get it to the finish. And then once it's done, you can go back and say, okay, now that this is finished, or now that I've gotten to this point, let me go back over it and see if I need to change anything or fix anything or whatever. But get to the end and trust yourself once you get to that point, and then you can reevaluate.
And then also just, you know, to circle back to specifically what Lauren was saying on the, you know, the concept of kill the engineer, the ancillary saying that goes along with that from the consumption side is death of the author.
Yes.
Oh, sure.
Exactly. Hey, and oh boy, as we said several times before, sometimes it's just like we want to kill the author or bring death to the author for other reasons. It's actually what came up last night when I was streaming. I streamed for 9.5 hours, but I was playing golf friends with some awesome people, and they said, the one book I should read is like the work of Orson Scott Card, and it's just like, oh yes, Ender Games, the amazing book that was written by Hatsune Miku. It's like, and not that awful asshole of Orson Scott Card. What are you talking about? And this is after we already mentioned, it's like, oh, I like Bill Murray, but like he's a domestic abuser. Find out what the divorce is all about. Or it's just like, apparently Chevy Chase is not a good person and all this stuff. Like,
apparently not.
And so like, also Scar Car was like the third person we mentioned. Just like, no, he's terrible. They're just like, and it's like, hearing the voice is like, wait, what's wrong with Orson Scott Card? It's just like, oh, you don't.
Oh, just Google it. Just Google it.
I want to say one thing about Ender's Game. I mean, I've read. I'm not the most well-read person as it comes to science fiction. I pulled it up mostly because, I mean, he won a Hugo, which is not nothing.
Oh no!
But I will tell you what, Ender's Game has to be, to me, one of the cruelest science fiction stories I've ever read in terms of how they deal with Ender Wiggin and the kids. It's just phenomenally cool.
Oh yeah.
And that was my overall impression. And my other impression is the books that came after it were almost acting as though they were trying to compensate for that. And a telling point in the midst of all of that is I haven't reread any of them, and I feel no impetus to reread any of them. On the other side, I have reread Stranger in a Strange Land more times than I can count, and I always find something new and fun in it.
Yeah, I love that book, and I know Heinlein is another.
Yeah, he's a problematic fave of many people.
And yet my conservative coworker is like, "Hey, Jonathan, you're an anarchist. You might Robert Heinlein." Is like, "Wait, he's the author of like the Starship Troopers." Yes. Okay, I prefer the movie because at least that movie knew it was a satire.
Is it okay if I derail into something completely stupid?
Go for it, please.
Okay. So Steve, I tweeted about this, and you actually liked it. Anybody here watch King of the Hill?
I love King of the Hill. Yeah, I love King of the Hill.
I am shocked that there was never an anime King of the Hill episode. And I don't mean one that was drawn like an anime. I mean where he walks in while Bobby's watching Yu-Gi-Oh! Or some crap, and he goes like, "Whoa, what's
that, boy?"
Yeah, and then he goes to his neighbor Khan and asks, like, "What's up with them Chinese cartoons?" Being accidentally racist.
I told you I'm from Mouse.
And then he talks to his other buddies, and it turns out Bill watches anime, the girly kind. You know exactly what I mean.
Oh, that's perfect.
And you think Dale's gonna being a conspiracy nut, that he's gonna go all South Park and say the Japanese are brainwashing children, but he's just like, just let your son watch it. And then Boomhauer, he'd just be like, "Dang old Japanimation, man."
That's so perfect. Yeah, I remember that tweet. That's such a perfect concept.
While we're thinking about anime, who here has seen Star Wars Visions?
I saw the first 3 parts.
I've seen the first 2, and I'm looking forward to the rest because it's fun, and it's stylistically. And in terms of the way they bring in the whole Star Wars universe using an anime pen, if you will, I think is wonderful. I'm really looking forward to the rest of it.
So here's the thing.
I feel like Nick has feelings about this.
I've only seen the first 3, and I'm just gonna say it's hit or miss. I'm guessing just from these 3 that a third of these skits are really good, a third of them are just okay, and a third of them are really fucking stupid.
Very, very possibly likely, yeah.
I haven't watched it yet, but I know like my for whatever reason, my personal bar for Star Wars related animation is apparently really high, because I've watched some little bits and pieces of other like Star Wars related animation stuff that people have said, "Oh, you have to check it out, it's awesome," and I'm just not impressed by it at all on any level. So, but
I really enjoy the Clone Wars and Rebels. I could not get past the animation style in Resistance, and then also the series ended before the show advanced to a point where it was interesting to an adult.
Resistance was the last one I gave a chance to, and I didn't mind the animation. The animation, I mean, it wasn't like fantastic or anything, but to me it was. I guess, I didn't watch all of it. Maybe it gets really good at some point, but I watched like the first 4 or 5 episodes, and I was just like, I just don't give a shit about any of this. I don't care about any of these characters. The jokes aren't funny. I'm just not into this.
With those Star Wars series is they start, and they're meant for us. They're meant for children, and the show grows and gets more serious as the seasons go on.
That's the Bad Batch in a word, yeah. And I like
the Bad Batch started a lot more adult because it was essentially a continuation of the Clone Wars. But if you watch the first season of the Clone Wars, it's real goofy, and the first season of Rebels is real goofy.
So here's the thing. I would not recommend watching any of these series in their entirety, because there are a lot of like misses, but when they hit, they really hit. One of my favorite arcs in the Clone Wars is basically its own movie. It's a 4-episode story about this one clone who learns about Order 66. just a few months before it actually happens in episode 3. And he comes this close to blowing the lid on the whole conspiracy. And you know he's not going to succeed. But they make you feel so badly for this clone and his brothers who are all being manipulated, all just being treated like robots made of meat, that you want him to succeed, and then it's crushing when he doesn't.
The Mortis arc was amazing.
There are few stories more exciting to me than a good conspiracy.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like the same sort of thing that would happen occasionally with Star Trek Voyager, where like every once in a while they would stumble onto a fantastic concept, or they would get a really, really strong episode, and you would watch it and go, God damn it, why can't the rest of the show be like this? Because like this is so good. And then it's right back to whatever, like TNG, the vanilla version, and it's just like, oh God, why can't it all be like this?
The thing to keep in mind about Star Wars Visions is it's like 9 little mini movies, and they're all made by different studios, different directors who all have their own sensibilities. And some you see all the things that are really cool and good about anime that have a more universal appeal. And in some you have the hoity-toity, flowery prose that doesn't really mean anything, and all the flash that doesn't really. Anyway, first skit, I will say, is really good. It kind of feels like a Kurosawa movie. It's mostly black and white, except for the lightsabers. And while it does clearly take place in some kind of Japan, it's just vague enough that I could see this happening in canon. I could see this battle actually happening on one of the more backwater outer rim worlds.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're dealing with an entire galaxy, which is who knows how many different civilizations. I mean, the possibilities aren't quite endless, but they're up there.
Well, as expert anime watcher here, I should say that that's like this is actually why some of the anime fans who try to get people to be interested in anime, we recommend anthologies, because you get different studios, you get different directors, you get even different you can show that there's different storytelling styles and different animation styles in general of doing anime. This always happened before. There was the Animatrix. There was the Halo Legends, which was kind of interesting. But then there were some. There's a couple of good ones. I've heard the good things about Robot Carnival if you manage to watch it, but no, Memories. Do try and track down Memories, because the first story was by Satoshi Kon. It's basically like a haunted house but in space. And so it's really good. I recommend Memories if you can track it down.
One thing I want to throw in real quick as it comes to the Animatrix. First of all, I thought, for the large portion, I thought the quality of that was pretty high. The one that I cannot forget and I love dearly is a detective story. Anime goes film noir. Yes. And it was wonderful.
The detective story was filmed by...
I don't remember the name of it, but the one with the runner that drops himself out of the Matrix just off.
Yes, and that's just the one before. So and good. It's a visceral style of animation that I thought just smoked. That was great.
You brought up Animatrix, and now it got me thinking about the new trailer.
Oh yeah, I was thinking that too.
And
yes,
I'm excited, but also both at the same time, is it going to work? Is it not going to work?
I see here. I like The Matrix. I think it's a really great popcorn movie, and a really a very well done action movie. I think some of its most ardent fans tend to grossly overrate it, but I think it's good, and I enjoy watching it. I think they should have stopped at 1. It's one of those movies. It's one of those movies where it's like the ending of the first Matrix is perfect. Like Neo has accepted himself and his role, and he's going to go out and preach the gospel to the people, and he can fly now and blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh, that's the perfect ending. I don't give a shit about the rest of this world. I don't give a shit about Zion. I don't, you know what I mean? The sequels are all about, expanding the world, and, it's about the conflict between the humans and the machines. And it's like, and I don't give a shit about that in Terminator either. I'm sorry. I don't give a shit about the humans versus the machines.
It's kind of interesting to me how,
you didn't want the 30-minute rape scene?
No, I didn't, as a matter of fact.
Okay, so I want to say I do think it's interesting how in the first Matrix, it doesn't even end with him beating the machines.
No.
We just know that he's going to, because he has the power now. We don't need to see it happen. We just it's just like he's going to do it. But when it comes to the Matrix, the new one, I do find it kind of interesting how in this new virtual world, the new Matrix, everybody has smart devices because we're already slaves to the machines or whatever. What I find interesting is that the first Matrix was created to be based on basically 1993 because that was the peak of our civilization.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily the end of it. But this makes it clear that before the machines took over, our time did exist, with our smart device and everything, before everything went really bad. This is an interesting note for me. Last thing I want to say about the Matrix, though, the Animatrix, compilations like that, people are like, oh, it's this thing you like, but it's an anime. I'm like, okay, but what's it actually about? I don't really care who's drawing it, which animation studio, who's directing it, just as long as it's an interesting nugget of an idea. Yeah. And my two favorites in that are one where there's this guy who's a runner, and he just starts going so hard that he starts to break out of the Matrix.
Yeah.
And then there's
world record.
Yeah. And then there's another one with kind of a similar idea where a group of kids are just horsing around and they encounter a glitch in the Matrix and they start like poking at it and all sorts of weird shit starts happening. Those are really interesting ideas that play around with the idea of the world. I like that.
Yeah. I have a point to make about animation stuff that Nick brought up, but first, Victor, you had your hand up.
Yes, I think The Matrix is a pretty cool movie. I've seen all of them.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the thing about I barely remember anything that happens in the sequels. To be honest, I think I've only watched each of them once, maybe, and it just they're watchable. Like I don't remember hating them. They're watchable movies, and the Wachowskis are fantastic filmmakers. They're both they're very talented directors and writers. So I mean, there's nothing wrong with them, but it's just I thought the part of the story that I was interested in is over. The first part is the.
I mean, after all, actually, Photo Ideas, that's an old video of basically steaming or playing or saying no, the third Matrix movie is good. It's just there's a big half of it that is totally boring and uninteresting because the two cardboard cutout leads that they focus on is where instead of the people in Zion that's fighting for survive. That was the interesting part of Matrix Revolution. I personally like all three Matrix movies, but I'm with you. It's the philosophy is not as deep as people like it.
No.
I think Jason Harding's opinions about how the it's interesting how the freedom fighters are kind of terrorists because if you're not with us, you're against us sort of thing. I gotta remember that for my own political leanings as well. But I do I'll look. I don't know, but I have not seen the trailer for the new Matrix movie. And it's I don't know, but I'm probably, if I plan on watching it, I'm not going to watch any promotion for it whatsoever because I like to watch it as new as possible without any prior information. If I'm already said, okay, you have me, I'm going to watch it. Don't watch any trailers because they usually spoil the movies. But
I'm curious about the new one. I'll watch the new one when it comes out. It's always a little interesting when they come back to a series after so long. Yeah, because just to see okay, how are they going to get back into this? Because the ending of the last one seemed pretty definitive, and and it's we're doing another one. Okay, I mean, it might end up being a horrible mistake, but I'm at least interested to see the mechanics of what is this story going? Especially since it seems Neo is from the trailer, it seems like he's back to not knowing who he is anymore, and it's it's just I wonder how they're going to do this.
Steve, as it comes to that, consider Neo was who knows what happened to Neo at the very end when he finally defeats Agent Smith. I mean, but his data is still in the Matrix one way or the other. Now, if that Matrix was able to recoalesce it in, if you'll pardon my, crossing genres here, the same way that Stark was able to recoalesce Jarvis.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, then you've got, the potential of, who am I and what am I doing here? And you'll notice he was back to being Thomas Anderson at the beginning during that interview.
Yes, Mr. Anderson.
Oh, which something you were saying about something that the filmmakers are also saying something there too, because that whole, the whole Mr. Anderson thing was, you know, the Wachowskis. I can never pronounce their name. As somebody with a pronounced name,
you're not alone. Don't feel bad.
But, it was, you know, before they'd come out, and that was a deliberate, you know.
Because the estrogen at the time in 1999 was actually red. So when you're taking the red pill,
I wasn't even thinking about that. I was thinking specifically about referring to him as Mr. Anderson, as a dead name.
Going back to his dead name, I wanted to bring up too, because Nick, you mentioned talking about the Animatrix and the phenomenon of, here's the thing you like, but an animated version. That got me to think about the rending of garments on Twitter the last few days over Chris Pratt doing the voice of Mario, because at Nintendo's big like upfront thing, they announced that there's gonna be an animated Mario movie, and Chris Pratt is doing the voice of Mario, and everybody, all the Super Mario fans are like, you know, losing their shit over, oh my god, Chris Pratt, like it's and I get it, like Chris Pratt is not who I would cast as Mario either, to be quite honest, but it's a fucking animated movie. Who gives a shit?
Like with me, it's a twofold thing. For one, I am just sick of Chris Pratt. I'm tired of seeing his big dumb face and hearing his dumb voice and seeing him play the same damn character in 90% of the movies.
Why does he have to be in everything? Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, the other half, though, is my problem.
The other half, though, is just that I'm sick of the disrespect that voice actors get. There's still people in the industry and just casually who still believe that voice acting for video games and cartoons isn't real acting. Well, what the hell do they call it when Chris Pratt does it? When a real actor voice acts.
It's a ADR voice actor. I think it was Richard Epcar. He voiced like Bato in the Ghost in the Shell like movie and the series, but like he does a lot of voice work for video games, and he does ADR work of being a director too as well. He did not name names, but there's times when either for a video game or some other like project, the big name celebrity, a no name, walks into the studio and thinks this is easy. So it's like, no. A voice actor is not just doing voices. I can do voices, but like that's not what people are looking for. And B, it's more of like acting with your voice, and actually the Billy Boneson who voiced Jet from Cowboy Bebop, when he saw Steve Bloom who voiced Spike Spiegel, Steve Bloom, who's always a big comic book fan, a big fan of like the work anyway, as it were, when he had to like maintain his like proper distance from the microphone and be right there so the mic can pick up and everything, doesn't mess up the recording. But since he's playing Spike Spiegel, his entire body was moving around. It's almost like a reverse bobblehead when he was recording for the Knock on Heaven's Door, the Cowboy Bebop movie. So yeah, you just gotta feel it in your whole body. It's where it's not just like me talking in microphone.
You have to communicate more without people being able to see your face or your gesticulating or anything.
It's called involvement.
Yeah. Well, and you can tell I mean, with the actors who are successfully able to make the transition from live action acting to voice acting, like someone like Mark Hamill, who is able to do both very well. He's a good voice actor and he's a good on-camera actor. You can tell the difference between someone like that and someone who maybe they're inexperienced, or maybe they're in that mindset, you know, that was mentioned a minute ago, where they think it's easy and they're just like, all I need to do is just come in here, and they're just reading, you know. And there's a different, even though, I mean, even, you know, really great voice actors, I mean, why wouldn't you? You always have the script there right in front of you, because you're not going to be seen anyway. So you always have your lines in front of you, but it's different from just doing a reading. You know, you do have to give a performance, and you have to
give a crap.
And you have to find a balance between overdoing it and underdoing it, because you can't put so much into your voice that it comes out, you know, like you're overdoing it. But at the same time, you have to be able, because your voice is the only part of you that's going to be in the work, you do have to put more into your voice than you may ordinarily would, you know, if you were giving an on-camera performance. But
it has to be dramatic without being melodramatic.
Yeah, and
you just made me picture you just made me picture this whose line is it anyway kind of scenario with like an opera singer who's having to do a pretty subdued role, but he's constantly fighting the urge to just break out into song.
Yeah, there's a really funny Mitchell and Webb sketch of a guy who's like he's a documentary presenter. And he's doing an on-camera piece for this documentary he's doing about something about the history of science or something, and he keeps doing this with his hands, and he just can't help himself. Like every time he's perfectly, as soon as the director says action, he starts doing this whenever he narrates, and he won't. And the director keeps having to go cut and say, no, I need you to do less with your hands.
I mean,
go ahead.
I mean, several times on like instead of Kill Bill and instead of the Star Wars and instead of all those other people, the actors with either the lightsabers so the Conors would go shoot.
Yes,
shoot.
Like you don't make the noise.
Don't make the noise. Oh,
you can't make the noise. We put that in. You can't be making the noise.
I literally had to tell Ewan McGregor over and over again not to make that noise.
Don't make it. Do it. Don't make the noise.
But it's so fun.
And it's so, and especially if you grew up as a kid playing Star Wars or playing Star Trek, you make the noise. Like I had like a little extendable lightsaber when I was a kid, and me and my friends would, joom, 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 joom. Like you just do it. You just do it.
You know what? Something made me lose my shit the other day. I watched this clip from like one of the new Power Rangers series, and they have this really campy villain who's like a magician. You know, he's really performative, and he has this kind of voice, and his head looks like a hammerhead shark and a magician's cap all in one.
Oh,
yeah,
but he's in an actual melee fight. He's having to fight one of the Rangers up close, and he's narrating himself. He's going like, he's going slash, block, jab, block.
Karate chop.
It's the funniest thing I've ever seen.
That's like hilarious.
1960s Batman.
Yes,
exactly.
Thwack.
Or what's his name? Gold member. Yeah, what was that? Austin Powers.
Austin Powers.
Yeah, that
Judo
whole
chop.
trip.
Yes,
Exactly.
or in the Lego Batman movie. No, Robin, we're gonna punch so hard that word's gonna explode out of our fists. Pow!
Yeah, there was something. Yeah, there and but yeah, there have been lots of live action actors that have been able to make the jump. But I mean, like I've been watching because I'm preparing to do a video about them. I've almost watched all of the DC original animated universe movies, which is like a subset of the direct to video DC animated movies that they've been making for like 20 years. And I'm almost to I have one more to watch, and then I'll have watched all of them in that particular series. And most of the high profile characters in that are played by people who are known as live action actors. They're not primarily voice actors. And some of them are really good. And you can tell that they're really trying, and they're trying to do their best and give a good performance. And some of them, it sounds like they just walked in and they said, "Okay, I'm going to read my lines." You know what I mean? Like Nathan Fillion, who does Green Lantern and has played Green Lantern in a bunch of cartoons now, and he's excellent. Like he's got it. He has a take on the character. His comic timing is perfect, and he's just got it. He's like a Mark Hamill type of guy who he just knows what needs to happen here, and he does it right. But then there was another one for who was it who did Batman's voice in the Dark Knight Returns ones? Peter Weller, who is a terrific actor. I mean, Peter Weller is a fantastic actor, but for whatever reason, when he does the voice of Batman, you would think on paper he's a good choice to play Batman because he's got a really imposing voice, and he's the right sort of age group. Actually, he's a little older, but he's in he's an older Batman because it's Dark Knight Returns. But it just sounds like he's sleepwalking through the whole thing. Yeah. Anyway, Victor, you had your hand up, and then Joe, you had your hand up. So Victor, go first.
So what do you guys think of Lower Decks?
I haven't seen it yet, so I don't have.
I've only seen a few episodes, but I really like it.
I enjoy it.
I've seen a couple, and it looks like it's got some promise. I don't know, the problem is I think I got all of 3 free episodes, and that's it with Apple TV, and then I have to probably spend the money and get in with Paramount Plus or something like that.
Yeah.
I
like
it. It has its moments. I'm not 100% convinced that it's the genuine article, but it has a chance.
I've watched the whole thing, and I really
Riker
I
making an
enjoy it quite a
appearance in it.
Oh, so the Troy and Riker are going to be making an appearance in Lower Decks?
They were in it. They were in it last year. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They've been in it a few times this latest season. So yeah, I've
Well,
been watching episodes here and there.
Has Troy been in it this year so far? I know Riker was in the first episode.
Yeah, she
but-
was. It was a while back.
Okay. Yeah, I like Lower Decks. I mean, it's funny. Like I enjoy it. My standard line for it is it usually makes me smile. It doesn't make me laugh all that often, which is kind of a problem for me. But I enjoy it. Like I watch the new episodes every week, and I enjoy it. I never come away from it wishing I hadn't watched it. You know what I mean?
I will say this, my friend, Keith Taylor says in our group chat that's like Lower Decks is future on plus next gen, good stuff. Okay, if that's comparison,
if it was that good,
okay, but well, I'll say this to another person, friends, Joanna, and that's the same. That Joanna, that's that same Joanna Robbins who I always make money for. She loves Lower Decks so much she wishes that I would watch it too, so that like she can we can both geek out about it, and she can like info dump me on like her love of Lower Decks. She's willing to give me her password so I can like watch it on her account as it were. But Joe,
naughty.
I really find
yeah.
Yes, I do find the people talk about it, the love letter to Star Trek, particularly the Next Generation.
Yes,
I do feel that. I do think it's fan servicey, but it's fun fan servicey. I enjoy it.
Like I said, I enjoy it. I do. There are a lot of times when I feel like they go for a reference instead of a joke, and I think that holds it back. But I mean, but sometimes it's sort of like what Nick was saying earlier about the Star Wars animations, and when it works really well. And there have been individual gags in Lower Decks throughout the first season and what I've seen of the second season so far that have absolutely dropped me. Like there was a gag, a visual gag in an episode, I think it was the second or third episode this season, so it's a few weeks ago now, where it was a gag involving a callback to Giant Spock from the animated series.
Yes,
and
I remember
it absolutely killed me. It was one of the funniest things I had seen, and it was totally a fan service joke. And if you didn't know what that was, or you weren't familiar with that episode, like you would have just thought that was weird. But if you know what it is, it's so goddamn funny and so dark.
It just looks like a bit like a museum piece.
Yeah,
it just like that. Yeah, of a joke from Invader Zim, where some of the animators they accidentally made a police officer too big. So he was just like stumping through. so Vasquez, they just rolled with it and added like big stumping sound effects. It's just that big.
You've mentioned Invader Zim, and now I just have to say Doom.
Again, now let's let Joe.
Yeah, Joe, go for it, man.
Going back to the voice acting stuff we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Steve had mentioned like doing a reading as like an example, which is really interesting because I do a lot of audiobooks, and like that sort of narration is almost like a step further, because at least with traditional animation, they can record your face and your stuff and actually get some of that sort of thing. But with legitimately what is just a reading, like the performance and not over performance is so important on that. But because a lot of them are done, like the difference between a good and a great one is so vast. One like almost sounds like an audio play, and another is just reading the book. And
that's my point.
So it's so much. And I got a really good example of that. John Scalzi's books. He's a big Next Generation fan, and he got and he has Will Wheaton do a lot of the books. And the first one he did, Red Shirts, is Will Wheaton so bad in that, like as he's reading like the he said, she said, he emphasizes that point and just destroys the fact that you're listening to a story and not just having somebody read a book. And meanwhile, like the later, like I think the most recent one was from the Lock-In series, Head On or something like that, and Will is just fantastic, and he's just completely got it. And it's just, you know, experience and a better director at it. And
Yes,
night and day.
Suddenly he's Jim Dale, but yeah, I mean, it's like, I mean, you're right about the different levels of production values in some of these are amazing. And admittedly, when you get to the more radio drama style, it is a different bit of an animal. But like, you know, I recommend people read both World War Z physically and listen to the audiobook because I find they're actually
different experiences. Yeah.
That I can see that.
They're that different, huh?
Oh, I mean, well, because they brought in voice actors, all kinds of different known voice actors to do the different interviews. And it is, I mean, you got to understand also, this is Max Brooks. So he's Mel Brooks' son. He can break.
255 AD asked a good question in the chat. But he asked it directly to me. I'll just like bring it to everyone else because like, well, the audiobooks I listen to is like stuff from Audible, Anarchist, or maybe something from like Liverbox. So like, and that's one thing. It's just like, it's one thing to be just reading, but like if there's almost zero inflection in the voice or variations, that's where it's kind of like boring to listen to. If there's a bit of like a up and down, like someone just like giving a speech or something like that, that could be more interesting. So I have not listened to any audiobooks with like sound effects, but 255 ADs really hates them. So how does everyone feel about like sound effects in audiobooks if you experience that?
It depends. I mean, it's like anything else. I mean,
from what I understand, I haven't listened to too many of them, but like the 80s. And they're kind of doing the books in that style.
I think like just as a general rule, and I know there are exceptions to this, and like I said, it's just read by a single narrator and it's just a person reading you the book, and they add sound effects. That is kind of tricky because it sounds like it's like, wait a minute. Okay. So because it's like, is this an audiobook or is this a radio drama? You know, and
exactly.
And
what if
it's
the
like
narrator
if you want,
does the sound effects themselves with their mouth?
like they're doing the
There's no narration. There's nothing. It's just
sound effect podcast where he'll have someone, you know, he fired the gun and Conan will go shoot, shoot, shoot. You know, and I mean, it's so dumb, but it's so funny. It's like he just will literally, as the sound effect, will say the word of the thing that's happening, and it's hilarious.
It's just
he does those things where he sits down, he games with like celebrities, but celebrities who are actual gamers, like actually, and he's just like fumbling around with a controller. Like
Conan is funnier doing things that he is bad at than I think anybody else, because he throws himself into it, but he's also like making fun of it and making fun of himself as he does it. Like
he's earnest.
So he's doing it self-aware.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yes,
exactly. All those like all those Conan Without Borders things that he does, like that's nothing. It's nothing but that. Like, and he never does it in a way that's like disrespectful to the culture that he's encountering. But it's always
about
like
how he's ignorant.
Yeah, it's about he's ignorant, he's out of place, he doesn't understand, and he makes himself the idiot. And but at the same time, like just absolutely goes for it. And yeah, it's brilliant.
Sorry, but before the hour's up, there's just one more topic I want to touch upon.
Okay.
That goes like back to voice acting. But to finish my thoughts on voice acting in one sentence, I'm just upset that Charles Martinet, he's worked at this role for a lifetime, and they gave it to some guy who won't even leave his homophobic church.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, but disrespecting voice actors. But okay, the last big topic I want to touch upon: suit actors. I have so much respect for suit actors.
Oh yes,
and I'm not even just talking about people on Star Trek who like are coated in makeup. I mean people who are completely encased, where you can't see any of the person because they're playing a robot or something. And you think about like all the tokusatsu shows, stuff like Power Rangers, Kamen Rider, all that stuff, where all the monsters are just people with suits who have to like flail their arms around fighting and stuff and do like actual acting, with their body language. And I've seen like the interviews of some of the people whose job is just to do that year after year after year. And it's like, it's awful. It's claustrophobic. They're baking in there. And I just have so much respect for like all that they have to do and how much they're overlooked. But you know, it's kind of funny because it makes me think of this. This is something I got a couple years ago.
Brother.
These kinds of toys that they make in Japan, they're not big on articulation. This is basically all they can do. It's a brick. It's just meant to look nice, to be a statue. And the thing is, they usually design the costumes that are in the show after the toys. You know. So with that benefit of hindsight, a couple years later, Hasbro of America made this, which is the same thing, but it's much more posable. They changed the proportions a bit, made the head bigger, so it actually looks like the human in the costume that you would see in the footage. I love that. That is so neat. But here's the thing about the gimmick of this line. They have these pegs all over them. The idea being you can take these pieces off and just like put them wherever you want, give them a really customizable loadout. But the pegs here are shortened. And I've seen so many like YouTube reviewers and people complain like, I just don't understand why they made that unnecessary change. This is why. If it was possible for little Timmy to do this in America, Hasbro would be hit by a deluge of angry Karen moms complaining that their dinosaur toy made their son gay.
That's perfect.
That kind of thing already happens. I know a guy who works at a Lego retail store, and one mother came in complaining that her son built a rainbow dick out of Lego pieces, and it was irresponsible of Lego to let him do that. The only way Lego could possibly prevent that is if they sanded down all the studs like they did for this and made it impossible for any two bricks to stick together. They'd have to completely ruin the toy.
Yeah. Like, I'm sorry that you're upset.
Actually, Legos.
Are you
I'm
seriously
sorry that your son is curious?
Yes. Are you seriously complaining to me that your kid made a dick out of Legos? I just want to make sure that that is the complaint you are making. Legos that you can make anything out of.
Yeah, and when they say anything, that is not a set that has a limit on it.
Right. Like the whole point, the whole appeal of the toy is you can build anything you can imagine out of the little bricks.
Karen,
do you go into the art supply store and complain to the manager there that they sold you clay and your son made a dick?
Yeah, or like paper and a pencil. My child drew a dick on this piece of paper, and I want. It's how is this my problem?
Yes,
your boy's gonna make dicks out of whatever he can find.
Yes, I mean, Karen, would you prefer it if your son made a vagina out of Legos? Because that would be impressive.
I would love to see that Lego vagina. What does it even look like? I mean,
and it'd be more impressive, and he knows where the clit is.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh God, what have I started?
I don't know.
That's a liberal conspiracy. Didn't you know that?
It's a liberal conspiracy. Everything is a liberal conspiracy.
What a way to end the hangout on that note. Making the vagina out of Legos.
Yes. I say encourage your children to build Lego genitalia. Let them explore the human anatomy in a way that is safe.
Do you ever hear of vagina dentata? This is vagina legota.
I need more little white Legos. I need a little more white Legos for my.
But remember, not all pussies are pink. That's very important.
Yes, very important. So the
story at 11. Steve Shives encourages children to play with vaginas.
Make sexually lewd Lego creations.
What snowball have I created?
I mean, honestly, look, my problem, I haven't played with Legos since I was like a little kid. I mean, since like before the licensing started and you could get like the big sets of everything. I mean, I think there were probably a few, but they weren't like as dominant as they are now. But so my Legos, it was always just like you get like the bucket, and it's a bunch of different pieces and stuff. And I mean, I don't think I would have ever had enough of the same color to do like, I mean, my Lego dick or Lego vagina would have been, there would have been like, I had to use a black one here and a blue one here and a yellow one here. It would have been like, what is it even supposed to be? Oh, it's a dick.
The one this kid made was rainbow colored.
That's
so that made her even more alive.
The answer is warts.
Yeah. Okay. They obviously have some medical issues. Let's not embarrass them any more than is necessary. Anyway, yeah. So we've gone for over an hour, so I'm going to wrap up. Don't forget, as I always like to remind everybody, about the charity links down in the description that are maintained by our buddy Some Random Geek here. If anybody watching wants to help out somebody who needs a helping hand financially, that's a good place to go. Also, I am doing this once a month with my Patreon patrons and my channel members because I make my living off of patron and channel members, and it's really nice that I get to do that. So if you enjoy my YouTube channel and you want to become a patron, you can go to patreon.com/Steve Shives, or you can become a channel member by just clicking the join button right there on YouTube, and it helps me out tremendously. So if you can afford to do that and you think I'm worth it, go ahead and do that. That'd be fantastic. And if this looks like fun, we do this once a month. And if you're a member or a patron, you have a chance to join us on the last Sunday of every month, usually, and hang out for an hour and have a good time. So thanks everybody for watching. Thanks to all of you in here with me. This was great as always. And we'll be back next month to do this again. So thanks for watching. Thanks for joining me, and take care, everybody.
Bye.